Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of the Sports News Blitz podcast, which is in partnership with the Sports News Blitz website. Again, we are with Sam Hurd to my right-hand side, I believe. Sam, hello.
Always good to be back.
And today, the opposite of the most recent podcast which has gone out, which was with a lifelong Man City fan. Today, we've got the brilliant TalkSport's very own Anil Kandola, who is a lifelong Man United fan, I believe, as well.
Yeah, for all my sins, unfortunately, yeah, that is correct, Matthew, mate.
So we've got a nice Manchester derby going on between the most recent podcasts. I love it. If this was like thoughtful and that was meant to happen, you'd think it were really clever. But I've only clocked it today, and I've thought, wow, that's pretty good. So at the very beginning, what we like to do is kind of ask you a bit of a random question, but it gets to know you a bit more on a personal level, kind of. And it's got some good responses from people, so we're interested to know your opinion on it. We would like to know which football ground you have found the best food. Now, this can be in terms of food that's been put on for press, or it can be food you've had as a fan in the ground or around the ground.
Oh, it's a good one. Do you know what? I think, well, look, I'd love to say Old Trafford, but I think if you boys know any of the food inspections that have happened over the last couple of years, it's not world renowned for the quality of the food they have. But look, jokes aside, I think there was a game that I was sent to when I was doing quite a lot of work for the social media team in TalkSport. It was Newcastle versus Liverpool. Was it last season? It may have even been the season before that. Never mind the atmosphere, which is absolutely brilliant. The food there was sensational, I must say. Of course, it was in the media box, so I probably would have preferred a quite a greasy hot dog or some chips or something like that. But no, the spread was good. So yeah, I'm gonna go with St James's Park. I hope that's matching with some of the good answers that you've had. But yeah, I think the atmosphere is quite matched with the food there, I'd say.
Yeah, I can't remember what Emily went with. Went with Manchester City.
Yeah.
And she was quite biased on that point and openly said she was quite biased on that point. We've had Jake Garner said Wolverhampton Wanderers. Don't know if you've been down there, but apparently they've got really good food.
Yeah.
And Guy Mowbray told us that Chelsea was the best spread. I don't know if you can agree or disagree with any of those.
Well, do you know what? I feel like I want to change my answer, seeing as everyone else has been like, biased to their football team. So I'm going to go with Old Trafford. I'm going to say, wow, amazing food there. That's the best thing about it. But yeah, no, they're good. They're all good answers. I think it would be quite good when you have an answer that won't necessarily be Premier League. That would be a good answer for you boys, won't it? Some rogue non-league team or something like that would be quite good, wouldn't it? But yeah, I'm going to stick with St James's Park. I'm going to lock in Newcastle for the best food I've had.
Well, something Guy Mowbray did say actually was when he was there, he's quite openly a big York City fan, and he, again, I believe this was probably quite biased, but the York City food is apparently really good, and they do. I think he called it a lava pie because you'd bite into it at the start of the game, and then you'd eat it at halftime because it'll only just have cooled down enough.
That's good. At least you can't say that it's not too cold then either, can you? So maybe that's the way forward for these teams, isn't it?
Lovely. Right, we'll get cracking on because we want to talk to you at the beginning about the Premier League and more specifically Manchester United, which obviously you have quite a strong interest with, to put it delicately. Just to kind of hit the ground running, how do you think United are going to do this season?
Ooh, how long have you got? I think. Look, do you know what's actually quite funny? I'm sure we'll probably get a chance to talk about other stuff as well. But I feel like the more that I've progressed in my career, the worse Man United have got. So during school, Man United were absolutely amazing, winning every title and then some over and over again. And of course, you appreciate it. You understand what's going on. But as you get older, and of course, as you boys will very quickly learn as well, that the more you make your strides in the industry, it almost becomes like the clothes that you wear. It's really strange to explain, but it's almost as if you just know if your team's doing well, then you've almost got a few bargaining chips. You've got a few chips on the casino table, if you like, and you almost brush your shoulders up a little bit, you puff your chest out, and you think, okay, right, now who's going to talk to me about football? Whereas even just this week, so obviously yesterday was the first time that I bumped into Darren Bent in the TalkSport office, and I'm really fortunate. I'm really, really good friends with Benty, obviously, since I've started working there, and he's never one to shy away from giving me a bit of stick from Man United. The moment they go a couple of goals down, he'll be FaceTiming me before the game's even finished. He'll be straight there to stick the boot in. And yesterday I went to go get some food, and I just tried to put my head down so he almost didn't notice me, but bang, the moment he noticed me, screams over the office, "You lot are, you know what, we'll keep it above board." But yeah, so I think that summarizes pretty much what it's like. But look, I think it's a very difficult time. I think with the situation with Man United at the moment, I think the worst feeling is that it's too familiar, the feeling of you just know, no matter how much of a fan you are of Erik ten Hag or Solskjaer or Mourinho, Van Gaal, whoever it was, we're just so used to this feeling now when you follow Manchester United from a professional point of view, or even just as a fan. It feels like the same old merry-go-round that we keep going on as a fan base, really trying to get behind the manager, but when he doesn't really give you that much to get behind, it's quite hard to do so. But yeah, I think realistically, the season, dare I say it, before it's barely October, right? And I feel like it's a write-off already. It's very much the same way as when I speak to the fan base who are quite older than me, should we say, the ones who were supporting Man United before the Sir Alex Ferguson days. They were telling me that when you support Manchester United back then, it was forget the league, just absolutely sack it off. There's no way on God's green earth Man United are going to win the league. It's just about the cup competitions. And now, as a Man United fan, that's what I feel like now. I look at the league and I think, does it really matter if we beat the likes of Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal? For bragging rights, it's great, but realistically, a Man United are going to go for them top positions. If we're being honest, no. So I look at the cup competitions as where I get my joy. It doesn't really happen too much. You only have to look at last season's Champions League. It's not that much joy, but yeah, it's a difficult time for Man United fans. But I'd say the one positive that we have as a United fan base is that no one can ever, and I mean ever, call me a glory supporter anymore, because there hasn't been any glory. So I think I've proven my worth now as a Manchester United fan.
Realistically, what would you aim? What would be a good season? What kind of season would you take this year? Positioning, finishing wise, and all that.
Yeah, honestly, the Premier League is such a write-off. It's a situation with Man United now that you genuinely don't know, whoever they play, what the score could be. I had even a couple of Man United fans who were quite scared to play Barnsley a few weeks ago because they were thinking, oh, we might not take them too seriously. This could be another shock. But thankfully, they came out of that one fairly unscathed. But I think the big one for me personally is the Europa League. Man United haven't exactly got off the best of starts in that competition already, but you look at it and you think, with the strength of the Premier League, the Europa League, of course, now with the fact that the Champions League third place teams don't drop into the Europa League, who the teams are going to be in that competition. So I think the Europa League for me as a Man United fan is the big one, not only because it brings silverware, but also, as you boys know, it brings you Champions League qualification for the following season. So I think I'm already in the scenario where I'm firmly putting my eggs all in the Europa League basket, which as a Man United fan is quite scary to say, isn't it?
I mean, it's pretty realistic for you to win it, isn't it? Though I don't know if you've checked the score, but
what's the score now?
Porto may have just scored.
Oh, brilliant. So, yeah, at the time of this recording, I said to both of you boys, didn't I, just before we hit record, I'm keeping a little eye out, but I thought, you know what, I'll distract myself a little bit, but I really hope you haven't brought me bad news again, Sam. This was going to be something that cheered me up, mate, and you've gone for me straight away.
I assumed you would have already seen it, but
I'm trying to distract myself. We'll worry about that when we come to it tomorrow morning, but yeah, there we go. But that's the prime example. The one hope that I do have, Man United are already trying to make a mess of it. So, welcome to the world of a Man United fan.
You mentioned in that answer that it's the same feeling again as it was under Ten Hag. It was under Ten Hag now, under the likes of Mourinho, under Solskjaer. There has always been chopping and changing of managers. There's always been chopping and changing of different players. Does this lie above the managerial side? And if so, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is a question that could almost be broken into two answers, if you like. I think first and foremost, this idea that Man United should keep the manager no matter what's going on because we always sack the managers, I think it's nonsense if you ask me, because by that logic, if I was in charge, I would be kept in at Man United, because we can't keep sacking the managers. You can't just, take a situation that's happened all of these years and then apply it, even though Ten Hag, does he really deserve that leeway? I think he's a very fortunate individual to be there in the job now. Of course, he had the great FA Cup victory, which wasn't a fluke. He fully deserved that. He set his team up perfectly, and it was a great performance, probably his best as a Man United manager. But you look at this season again and you think to yourself, even the most optimistic Erik Ten Hag supporter, what have they got to go off? The performances have been bad. Man United have only scored 1 goal at home in the league. 1 goal. This is Man United, and you'd understand. I was going to say you'd understand if we played Man City every week, but even still, to score just 1 goal in 5-6 games, it's just crazy, isn't it? And I think that summarizes exactly what's going on now. I think, do you know what? I almost pin this back with Erik Ten Hag before we obviously move on to the board level and that dilemma as well. I look back at, I think it was Sevilla that he played in the Champions League. It all just went terribly wrong for him. Maguire, I think, had a really bad moment where he was at fault. De Gea was still at the club and he came out for the ball, and it was just an absolute mess. And I think psychologically that did a lot of damage to Erik Ten Hag. I feel like he thought that game was in the bag. It should have been. And for all of a sudden the season to just flip on its head in the way it did, I think that left a lasting impression in his mind anyway. So I think ultimately, look, it's time for Erik Ten Hag to go. It doesn't take a genius to work that out. I think there have been too many mistakes that he's made individually that just almost warrant the sack, if you like. But it is a good point that you make there. Look, Man United have been in this merry-go-round, haven't they? All of this time of sacking their managers, bringing in a new manager. He gets top 4, bit of optimism, a couple of big money signings, and then back to square one where they underperform the following season. And then we rinse and repeat. But you're totally right. There needs to be something said in regards to, there must be something going on at board level. And now I think this is where we're in a bit of a difficult situation. Of course, Ineos have now took over the footballing side of Man United, and everyone's really happy. We've got footballing brains back at the club and all of this. But if we're being honest, if the Glazers operated in the way that Ineos have so far, then they would come under a lot of criticism, whether it's pundits, fans, and everything in between. They would get a lot of heat for it. So I think we need to keep the same energy when it comes to the new board. Of course, as Man United fans, we want them to do amazing. We want them to do well and bring all the glory back. But the treatment of Erik Ten Hag, almost cheating on him, if you like, it's almost like having a girlfriend at home going, no, I promise I'm not cheating, but I am flirting with a few girls and I'm on a night out. But that's not cheating. But it depends where you draw the line. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like, yes, okay, by the letter of the law, you haven't done anything wrong, but ethically, it's just not right. And this is what set up Erik Ten Hag's season now. And you think to yourself, even the most able manager would struggle in these circumstances. So I think Erik Ten Hag does deserve the sack, but you're completely right. Something is deeper than just the managers being a bad appointment, isn't it?
Yeah, personally, I think he probably should have gone last year. I can't lie. From an outsider's perspective, anyway, I think
it's fair.
We're lucky, but the FA Cup did a lot for keeping him. Do you reckon who would be your dream manager if he was to go? Like, that would sort all your problems out.
Well, the answer I'm going to give you, it may seem like a cop-out, and if it is, then feel free and then I'll answer again. But my answer genuinely to this question, whoever asks me, is not Gareth Southgate. I genuinely could get myself behind any of the manager, even Graham Potter, because at least he's had a domestic job in the last 14 years. If they employ someone like Gareth Southgate, honestly, I don't care if I work in the media. I just could not bring myself to support that, because you're trying to reach the success of winning Premier League titles and Champions Leagues, or even just being in the Champions League. And for them to employ a guy who ultimately fell short on more than one occasion, I think, look, the most recent Euros, okay, they could have played better, but Spain were the most deserving team without a shadow of a doubt to win that competition. You just look at the one at Wembley, 1-0 up after 5-6 minutes, and they sat back for the rest of the game. If he thinks he can implement that style at Old Trafford, he's going to have a rude awakening call very quickly. So look, I'm at that stage now, which I think a lot of Man United fans are. They're so scared of the idea of Gareth Southgate coming in that we're almost open to pretty much anyone. Like, Graham Potter shouldn't get the Man United job, but you're thinking, well, it's better than Southgate, isn't it, really? So look, I think I would personally love someone like a Tuchel to come in, a big European name, and just to go, look, we're not messing around now with this, rogue style of play or trying to think outside the box. Bring someone back in, because in my opinion, the closest Man United were to reaching them levels was under Jose Mourinho. And of course, that didn't work out for off the pitch stuff and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, big name, bring him in, someone who's not going to be disrespected or bullied, if you like, in the media or in the dressing room, and hopefully they can sort that out. But I think even Pep Guardiola with Jurgen Klopp as his assistant would probably struggle at Man United at the moment.
I am quite interested as someone who who's got a lot of interest in Manchester United yourself. Do you think genuinely you will be able to get back to those heights that we're at 10, 15 years ago soon? I don't mean in 80 years' time.
Yeah.
In the near future. And if so, how on earth do you go from where you are now to where you want to be?
Well, if I had all the answers, I wouldn't work at TalkSport. I'd try and go for the managerial role, mate. But look, I think it's so difficult to say, and I know this is probably this might even be your clickbait title or your quote, if you like, for your caption.
Well, we do not use clickbait titles over on the Sports News Blitz.
You're talking to me here. I'm happy to give you what you guys need. But look, I think jokes aside, I don't actually think the squad Man United have got is miles away from challenging. And I know, look, that sounds absolutely crazy. And, if I put that on a TikTok, the first thing would be, you can tell you work at TalkSport, all this stuff. That's what I'd get. But I look at the squad and I think to myself, look, of course they need additions. Of course they do. I think they're missing a striker and then some. I know they've got Xerxes and Højlund, but these are kids who are very raw, who really need a lot of time to blossom. So that links in with your idea of it could potentially take a long time if, of course, they continue to try and wait out for them players to really get there. But you look at the players that they've got in that team now. I think Martinez, Dalot, Kobbie Mainoo, these are individuals that if they were in a Premier League winning side, they wouldn't look out of place. And look, you look at individuals now and you think to yourself, from where they were a couple of years ago, where Harry Maguire was the captain, to now he's the fourth, maybe fifth choice centre half at the club. The squad strength and the ability in that squad has moved in the right direction. But the issue is, and it's a big issue, is where this money is being spent. Please don't ask me any questions about Anthony, because that's clear, right? But I don't actually think this squad needs 7 or 8 new signings to actually challenge. They need a manager to be able to do that, which probably is the biggest one of all. But if they do sign a striker, if they bring in a number 10, I don't think Bruno Fernandes is good enough. There's another line for you if you want. But I think, look, I just don't think he's good enough to take Man United back to winning titles. And essentially the team's been built around him. When it's been Fred and McTominay, they haven't been good enough as a partnership. Then it's been Casemiro and Fred, who played for Brazil in international tournaments. That's not good enough. We bring Kobbie Mainoo, who's a superstar, who hopefully will go on to be England's best player in a few years. He's not quite good enough. You bring Ugarte in now. He doesn't look good enough. What's the common denominator here, So I think there are a couple of things, but I don't think it would take that much. I think if you bring in a new manager, it could take 3 years. It could take 2 years. We've seen managers come into the likes of Chelsea and win it in their first season. Pep Guardiola took 2 seasons to win it. But you look at the likes of Carlo Ancelotti, Jose Mourinho, these managers win it in their first season at Chelsea. So it may not seem as bad as it may look for Manchester United, but it starts and it ends with the manager. Ultimately, his decisions, his style of play haven't cut out. And I think once they get that into place in terms of getting a new man in and someone who can really put their ideas across, then we'll see. But as I say, just not Southgate, boys. Come
on. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot to take in there, I can't lie. But you were talking about signings and that recently. I was just wondering if you could then, along the same lines as the dream manager, maybe a dream signing to sort it out, because Ugarte, some of my friends were absolutely buzzing over him, bearing in mind never having watched him 100%. But they were talking highly of him, and he doesn't look quite cut out for it. I was wondering if you had a dream player that would come in and help you out as well.
Wow, that is a superb question. It'd have to be a striker. I think, look, they've got options in other positions. So I'd go striker and go on then. It's just such a cop-out, but give me Mbappe, stick him up top, then hopefully we'll be all right. But yeah, I think, look, that's the type of player Man United needs, I think someone who is going to, almost the way that Cantona did when he came in all them years ago, stick his collars up and go, right, the man is here now, and that's what I think they've been missing. So yeah, I'd say a striker, and we'll play it safe with a Kylian Mbappe. Give him to Manchester United, and hopefully it'll be all right. We might scrape top 4 then.
Just quickly, would you pick Mbappe over Haaland, or is that a Manchester bias, or is that, do you prefer?
Yeah,
Mbappe
no, I would pick Mbappe over Haaland. I think Mbappe would, whoever it would be for Man United, they'd need to do a lot, and I think Mbappe ticks more boxes in terms of doing more than Haaland. I think goal scoring wise, you would have to give it to Haaland, but overall play, I would stick with Mbappe. I think he's the best in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I've got
completely
a
agree.
feeling Emily might disagree with you.
Yeah, just don't tell her I said that.
You just obviously just signed Xerxes. What's your thought process with them two, with Haaland and not Haaland, sorry, Højlund and Xerxes playing up front, because both very young, both very talented. I
Yeah.
don't know I can't quite see how it works. I can't lie, but maybe you have more.
Yeah, no, completely valid. Do you know what? The way I look at it, and I think if these individuals were signed for, let's say, an Arsenal, a team who know what they're doing, a team that even if they get 4 or 5 injuries, they will still try and play the same way of football, and a healthy structure to come into where the pressure isn't so much on them. Like, you only have to look at someone like Julian Alvarez, who came into Manchester City. They bought him for peanuts. And it was very clear, you are not going to be the starting striker because Haaland's there. But every time he was relied upon, go on, let's see what you can do. Scores goals, got a big money move. The turnover and profit they got from him was ridiculous when they sold him in the summer. And this is the prime example. You know, you bring in these young players when you've already got a structure, when you've already got a strong 11, and you go, okay, right, let's bring in a couple of kids. Let's teach them the way we want to play. Minimal pressure on them, and they can really understand and blossom in the way that we want them to. Buying a 19, 20-year-old kid and going, right, no pressure, but you need to score enough goals for Manchester United to get back into the Champions League, for Man United to win competitions. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Højlund and Xerxes, they're good players, but even if they both started and Man United were allowed 12 players on the pitch, it still wouldn't quite work because they're so young and so raw. So I'm not one to write them off because I think that would be unfair, but I just don't think they're in the right environment to really blossom. And I think ultimately that is the issue for a lot of the Man United players, isn't it?
There is something weird about, because I'm a Brighton fan, so I come from obviously we're very good at squad building, like getting people into the team. And it does seem weird whenever you get players in the Man United, they do seem to struggle a bit to like find their feet quite quickly. But I saw recently, I don't actually know if it went through, but did Dan Ashworth come and join your backroom staff?
Yes, he's in. Yeah, he's in.
That would be massive for you then. I think he's brilliant. I reckon.
Yeah, the only hesitation that I've got is he's very good mates with Gareth Southgate. So I'm just thinking, please don't give a job to your mate. Please don't do it. But yeah, you're right. I think, look, his work has been brilliant, hasn't it? Newcastle were very reluctant to let him go, and yeah, he's very good at his job, but he needs to be very, very good to get Man United to where they want. So yeah, no pressure, but yeah, I hope you're right. I hope he does give us some success in the same way he did for your lot in terms of that structure. It's superb, isn't it? So yeah, fingers crossed.
Well, thank you very much. We'll move on slightly, and we'll speak more about yourself and your career. You have been at TalkSport, I believe is it 3 years now?
Yeah, just over 3 years. Yeah.
Just over 3 years at TalkSport. Well, many congratulations from us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Looking back across those 3 years, what has been the best sort of memory for you? Or I think Sam worded it to me earlier on what's the biggest pinch yourself moment you've had whilst working at TalkSport?
Oh, again, I don't mean to blow smoke up, you know what, but another great question, boys. It's difficult because, look, ultimately, TalkSport was something I used to listen to when I was 15, 16 years old. I didn't think radio was cool back then, so I actually didn't really tell anyone I used to listen to TalkSport. And then I was speaking to a friend at school, and he just dropped in. He was like, I was listening to TalkSport last night, and my eyes lit up. And I thought, whoa, this is like people do listen to this. It's not just this secret find that I've discovered, and since then, 15, 16 years old, I remember, listening to TalkSport. It was a sports bar with Andy Goldstein and Jason Cundy. It was back then for me, the all-time best partnership of radio. And it's crazy now, you fast forward, and for half the sports bar shifts, I'm the assistant producer on that show. So it's just so crazy how things work out. But in terms of a real pinch me moment, I think there's been so many, because as I say, I've been such a fan and a listener to the station for such a long time. But I think the one big standout moment was, of course, when I was in the social media team. I'm not in there now, I'm more in the production side of things. But they sent an email in the social media group chat saying, right, we've got the following games you need to go to do social content. Who wants them? And it came up with Man United versus Leicester. And I put my name in the hat and I thought, you never know. And they gave it me. They said, right, what we need you to do is go there, get some Instagram stories, maybe speak to a few fans, get some content for the social media platforms, and essentially just enjoy the game. And I went there and I just thought to myself, went through the media entrance for the first time at Old Trafford. I didn't even know where it was. And I'm a Man United fan. And, to go there and, you're still wet behind the ears and you're looking around, you're going, wow, I know that journalist. I read his articles. I know that broadcaster. I listen to him. I watch him. And it was such a crazy moment. But, I think it's a situation where you don't want that to get to your head a little bit, because I think once you do experience that, it's very easy to sort of sit back and go, well, this is what I dreamt of, so I've made it. But realistically, I'm not even halfway to where I want to get to. Do you know what I mean? So don't get me wrong, it was an amazing experience. I thought to myself, I'm sat here at Old Trafford, and funnily enough, they didn't actually win that game. It was 1-1, classic Man United. But yeah, it was great. And even I think the moment that really topped it off was, so I'm a Coventry boy, I'm from Coventry, and James Maddison obviously plays for Tottenham. He's from Coventry as well, and we used to be very good mates. Obviously, we drifted once he went to Norwich and stuff like that and went on. And, careers and life just takes you in different ways, doesn't it? And I remember being pitchside after that game, and I said to the head of media at Leicester, who was still pitchside taking the players out, I said, oh, is James Maddison coming out? And he said, no, he's not doing any interviews, because he thought I was trying to interview him. I said, oh, no, I think you've got it mistaken. I don't want to interview him. I'm just an old friend of his. I was just seeing if he was going to come out. And he said, okay, no worries. What's your name? I told him my name, and 5 minutes went past, and Madders came out, and we were having a good catch up pitchside at Old Trafford. And that moment there, two kids from Coventry sat there talking about football, who not technically, by fact, both of us were working that day. So, and just to have a good catch up pitch side, it was moments like that is what you dream of. It is just absolutely crazy. So I'd say that one is probably the big standout moment, I think, so far. Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't talk about, I saw recently you did you do TalkSport transfer deadline day recently?
Yes. It was with a heavy heart not to say that one, but yeah, that was another incredible moment as well. Yeah.
What was it like just because obviously it's such a hectic day, such a big day for football. So what's it like being working all day for that?
Yeah, it's a long day. It's incredibly long. It's such a strange day because your adrenaline's pumping through you all day. You're almost just stood there or sat there waiting for them to go, right, this story's broke, get on. You need to break it. You need to know what's going on, and you've just got to be ready. And then bang, the adrenaline shoots up. And then even when you come off it, you're still pumped. And then you realize it's been 7-8 hours and you haven't even had a glass of water, because you're not even thinking about eating or drinking. It's a bonkers day, but it's genuinely the most enjoyable day for me for the season. If Man United win the Premier League anytime soon, I'll probably change my answer. But I think that for me is the adrenaline, the buzz. I've been doing transfer deadline day now for TalkSport for a few years now. I've been working quite closely with the chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, who's been brilliant with me. He's taught me a lot. He's always tried to sort of, be that mentor, if you like, on big days like that. So yeah, them days are absolutely crazy. We've had a brilliant deadline day just gone, didn't we? Sancho moving, that was a big story, which I was fortunate enough to break. It was one of them moments where you think, right, okay, I watched Jim White with his yellow tie on Sky Sports News. Now I'm listening to TalkSport. What's going on? How do you do it? And you try and, put on a bit of a. It's crazy because you are entertained at the end of the day. You are discussing news stories, but if you guys are listening in your car or at home or whatever, you want to be entertained, right? So it's about being a bit flamboyant. It's about, almost acting as if you are on EastEnders a little bit and delivering a line. So yeah, that was another incredible moment. So hopefully, yeah, fingers crossed, it will be my career will be full of them moments as well. Yeah.
You mentioned just at the very end there that the deadline day, you can, when you're presenting yourself, it can be a little bit like EastEnders, and it's a bit more animated than you would be in day to day. Some of your colleagues, such as you've got your Rory Jennings, you've got your Darren Bent, you've got your Gabby Agbonlahor, big names, big characters. Is that something that is, like you've just said there, almost, is it sort of played up slightly when it's on air compared to the day to day? And is that something that you want to take from?
Yeah, I think, look, it's a good question, especially when you ask it to someone who works at TalkSport, because look, ultimately there's no going around it. This is the narrative, isn't it? That, we as assistant producers or producers, we go, right, okay, Rory, you go on and make sure you say the most outlandish thing you can do so we get numbers and we get hits. I can assure you, and I promise you, none of that happens whatsoever. Everything that's said, the most that we do as production is we set the topic. So, right, top of the hour, let's talk about Man United. Second hour, let's talk about Arsenal. And obviously in the meetings, that's where the ideas start to tick in the presenters' heads. What do I want to say? What do I need to do? And it's one of them things where I think it depends what you want to do. And I think, look, all of us have controversial opinions. You know, all of us. I've said just on this podcast alone that I don't think Bruno Fernandes is good enough. I don't think Man United are too far away from challenging for the Premier League title. Like they're probably about 15th at the moment. You know, and it's not because someone's in my ear going, right, make sure you say this so it can blow up for us. I just think it depends what route you want to go down. I think Simon Jordan put it brilliantly the other day. He was actually talking about Rory Jennings, not just him specifically, but in a wider aspect of going, you know, we've got these new types of contributors coming up now. And he referenced Rory and he said, look, I think Rory's great. And he said the reason why is not because of the stuff that he comes out with or the claims that he makes, but if you can back it up, it's an opinion. It's not a fact. So if you genuinely believe that and you're not saying it just to, you know, like I'll give you an example. So we did this YouTube show the other day where it was me and a few others in that space where it was just like a 4-hour YouTube live show. And we're just, you know, just talk about football, whether it's the Premier League games that are on now or just general football chit chat, very like pub feel. You don't forget the cameras and the mics are on, just talk about football. And I said that Steven Gerrard wouldn't get in an all-time Premier League 11. And I've got my reasons, and I genuinely, it might be because I'm a Man United fan, who knows, but I believe that, right? I posted the TikTok. And on one hand, you look at my TikTok, I haven't got a great TikTok account at all. And on one hand, you look at it and go, right, well, that's his most viewed video. So clearly he's done that for effect, for views and numbers. But then if I show you the DMs I've been getting, I'll read one just for you now. So bearing in mind that was on TikTok, right? This guy found my Instagram and he messaged me. Sorry, so this one was about Arteta. Sorry, this was a different one. This was where I said Arteta hasn't been successful yet because he hasn't won a big trophy, right? So again, that was my second most viewed video. Loads of views. People obviously go, right, it's clickbait, TalkSport, classic. What you don't see is the messages, and I'm not going to swear because we try and keep it above board, right? So this guy has found my Instagram and he DM'd me going, Arteta has turned the club round, you absolute effing people like you need shooting. Right. All I said was Arteta, I don't think has been as good as people make out. And this is the flip side that people don't see. People think that they're doing it for the views, doing it for the numbers. That's the only reason. But you say things knowing that that's the reaction you're also going to get, you know? So it's a good point. And I'm glad you almost asked me that because I feel like a lot of people would sort of dance around it and try and sort of just hint at it. But it's good that you've asked me it. And look, none of that happens as much as it seems. And look, at the end of the day, if you boys turn around to me now and go, you know, I can't believe he said that about Gerrard. I can't believe, who does he think he is? In my head, I'm going to think, all right, well, if you didn't like it, I'll probably say it again. And for some people, that might be he's doing it for clickbait. And it depends how you look at it. You may think that. But for me, it's going, okay, well, if you want to play the game, we'll play the game a little bit. But I can categorically confirm to you, I'm sorry, this would have been the best headline, wouldn't it? TalkSport do tell presenters to say garbage. But it's not. It's genuinely not. It's completely whatever the presenter wants to say. Management never get involved. It's never like a, right, say this or do this. If anything, I've said stuff previously that management have actually said to me, look, take your time with it. Don't ruin your career before it started, because, you know, I'll say what I want to say at the end of the day. But yeah, it's not something that we try and do. It's not something that we try and go, right, this is what we're going to say, or you know, try and get a reaction out of. But yeah, I think it's quite hard when you listen to Gabby Ogbonnahor, you know, sticking the needle in a little bit. But yeah, I can assure you none of that happens. But you know, that's the industry we're in at the end of the day, isn't it?
I think it's so understandable. The amount of times I've been sat around the pub with my mates talking football and everyone's just, you're not saying things just to rile people up, but you're saying outrageous things to rile your friends up about their footballing teams. Do you know what I mean? It's just all part of the fun of being a football fan because everyone cares way too much, let's be honest. But that's why it's so amazing. But I was wondering, have you, off the top of your head, do you reckon you have a best, maybe outrageous take that someone said on the show, or one that you
What,
was
me
like,
personally or
anyone?
people? Well, so there's one that I'll never let Rory Jennings get away with, and Adi Oladipo. These two are absolutely brilliant, by the way. The amount they've done for me, you know, is just, I can't even describe. You know, people. Rory's the perfect example, right? Because Rory is the most textbook person in terms of, right, he's just saying this so he can get numbers, he can get traction and stuff like that. But genuinely, one of the most hardworking individuals, one of the most honest people, even off camera, off air. He will genuinely try and help anyone he can. And for me, I don't care what you say. If that's the way you want to do it, that for me is the best type of people. The people are going, right, let's try and bring each other up rather than trying to tear each other down. But I'll never ever let them forget. So last summer, so not the one gone, the previous one, very early on in the window, they Man United signed Mason Mount, didn't they? And I went on and I said to both of them, I said, it doesn't move me. It doesn't, like, what does he do? And with all due respect, if the first thing you say about a player is he tries really hard, then I'm sorry. If you're, you know, if your job is to pick up rubbish from the floor, you try hard. Try and do your job as hard as you can. And they were like, no, you're miles off it. You've had an absolute nightmare here. You've had a shocker. Mason Mount, he's just won the Champions League. He's Chelsea's star boy. He's a hero. Can't believe they're letting him go. And we all know how that story went now, you know. So I think that one was a bit, from a personal perspective, that was like a, come on, you can't be saying that. But look, these happen all the time, you know. You say something and you know, you sometimes have egg on your face, you know. It happens. But yeah, you're never too far away in this industry of someone saying something so outlandish. But I just want to say, do you know this Rory Jennings Haaland quote that he said that he wouldn't make it in the Premier League? He didn't say it on TalkSports, so we can't claim that. Thank you very much. It was on Sky, I think. So that wasn't our fault. But yeah, but do you know what, Sam? I think that point that you made there is perfect about being in the pub. Like, for example, you could turn around to me and go, Man United aren't all that. And you might say it to get a reaction out of me, but there is a part of you that believes that, you know? So it's not all like, I don't believe it at all. I'm just saying it to get a reaction out of him. Like, there is substance to that. So it depends what you're looking for. You're looking for honest chat, or are you looking for chat that's professional? But then the professional chat, what you'll get is, you work in the media, you're all brainwashed, you're all being, you know, and so you can't win. So my advice to you boys and to anyone listening to this is, just be yourself. You're going to get in trouble either way. So you might as well just go down being yourself, you know? So that's the way I look at it.
Nice. That kind of links us into the final little part of this podcast, when we talk more in your career, but less about what you're doing and more how you started doing it. So what we would like to know is, did you have a hero or someone who you aspired to be like, someone who's inspired you to go into this media route?
Do you know what? I think I've always been interested in media. I've always loved football. I love sport. You know, it's not just football. I love cricket. I love even WWE. I'm a massive fan of it at the moment. It's just so good. But anyway, I think, look, as growing up, you know, that sports bar show that I used to listen to when I was 15, 16 years old, Andy Goldstein, obviously he's a big Man United fan. And, you know, I always get banter in the office going, bloody hell, are you going to, you know, crawl out a little bit? You know, you're always saying he's your hero and all this. But I think, look, he was just someone, not just from the fact that he was a Man United fan and, you know, he always used to stick up for us and, you know, defend our side, but it's the entertainment value. And of course, as I've got into this industry more, I've realized the importance of not saying things that will spark a reaction, but just through the fillers. Even if you're reading out, you know, a betting sponsorship or a competition that you guys, if you're listening, could enter, make it sound interesting. And every single minute I used to listen to Andy Goldstein, I thought, I never feel bored listening to him. And, you know, this is another thing with Rory Jennings. I think, you know, no matter what you think of him, you cannot tell me you listen to him and you're bored. You're either absolutely furious with him or you think he should run for Prime Minister when he speaks. Like, there's no in between. It's always like, oh, bloody hell. Do you know what I mean? That's for me a real big inspiration. So I'd say, growing up, I would say it's Andy Goldstein. Please, I hope he doesn't watch this because his ego will go through the roof. You know, and look, I used to do a podcast as well, and, you know, I got him as a guest on my podcast. And for me to have him as my inspiration to then sit down and ask him questions, you know, it's absolutely crazy. I'm so fortunate and lucky. But it takes, ultimately, in a wider aspect, it takes it takes bravery to try and do this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying, you know, I'm brave or anything like that, but it's a situation where, you know, I've said this story before that I finished university. I did a sports journalism degree. So very, you know, focused on what I want to go into direct. This is what I really want to make a career out of. I finished university. And obviously after that, I had a job at Royal Mail sorting parcels out. So it was just to sort of get me some money and, you know, just to keep me ticking along so I can have a social life and stuff like that. And I started my own podcast. And, you know, at the time, I could feel a little bit of, it was quite strange. And, you know, I had a bit of an inkling that people were sort of turning their nose up at it a little bit, but I thought, whatever. And then obviously, you know, you fast forward and I've landed a job at TalkSport. I had a friend who I still class as a good friend. I'm glad he was honest with me. He had a few drinks that night and he said, look, I'll be honest with you. He said, a couple of us were almost laughing, thinking he went to university, he got a degree, and now he's just started a podcast where he's, you know, interviewing a couple of his mates who were in sport a little bit. And now, you know, how many of them are laughing now, you know? So it's one of them things where you can't ever let someone go, what you doing that? Like, get the back of the queue. Look at everyone else trying to do it. And look, this is why, if I'm honest, this is why I'm on this podcast with you guys now, because it was actually quite funny. I laughed to myself when you messaged me, and it was the quote that you put at the top of the message. It was something like, "We do a podcast covering all things sport," and my message that I used to send out to people reaching out was, "Hi, I do a podcast covering all things sport," and it just like it took me back to the days of when I was at Royal Mail, thinking, this is what I love to see. You know, whoever it is, two people, whether they're at university, whether, you know, just trying to make in the media when they're 50, 60 years old. It's all about trying your best to make it in an industry that's so difficult. So hats off to you boys. And yeah, I hope that sort of answers your question a little bit.
Oh, it does. Thank you ever so much. Kind of, you've touched on it slightly there with your sports journalism degree. And also you've mentioned how difficult this industry really is. And well, I don't think that anybody's trying to say it isn't, because you can't just apply on Indeed. However, because everyone seems to have their own different story and a lot of them are incredibly fascinating. How did you first get into the media? How have you gone from sports journalism degree, your own podcast? Because from that to TalkSport is quite a hefty jump.
Yeah. I think, for sure. It's so as I alluded to, you know, I was at Royal Mail, just desperate to get into any media job whatsoever. And I'll share a story with you boys. You know, I was quite embarrassed about the story, but I can share it now, you know, looking back at hindsight. I was in Royal Mail, and I don't know if you boys have you ever been to London Euston Station? Have you been to the toilets in Euston? Have you ever been in the toilet there?
Not that I can remember, probably.
Yeah. If you don't remember, you haven't been, because it is the worst smell on the planet, right? And when I used to work at Royal Mail, the smell was almost the same, just horrible, absolutely horrible. And this was when I was still applying for jobs. And you mentioned there how difficult it is. Imagine trying to apply for jobs during COVID. So I was actually meant to have a works week experience at TalkSport. I think, what would it have been, 3 years before I actually got the work experience week, because they just kept putting it off because of COVID, putting it off. And it got to the stage where they said to me, if we have to put it off again, it's off. It's not suspended. It's just off because we can't do it. So luckily, you know, thank God that eventually it did go through. But yeah, going back to it, I was in Royal Mail. I was thinking, right, I need to get a break. Anything that I can do, I'll do it. I honestly don't care if it's paid, unpaid. I just need to experience and feel what it's like to actually contribute in this industry. And I applied for it was like an internship for like four weeks at Goal. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. It's like a big platform and stuff. And yeah, it was the first job that I got that he said, right, we're interested. Do you fancy doing a phone call interview? So I thought, oh my God, this is the furthest I've ever got. Had the phone call interview, which was meant to be for 10 minutes. It lasted 25 minutes. So, you know, if you're led to believe everything you hear on The Apprentice and all of these programs, that's a good job. You're in. Week goes by, didn't hear anything. So anyway, I emailed them and say, hi, I'm really sorry, but I was just wondering if there's any update. And he said, basically, so I went to this is why I was saying about the Royal Mail toilet. So I went to the Royal Mail toilets to see if I could, you know, I've got any emails and stuff. And they said, oh, really sorry. Just check your spam folder. It might have gone in there. So I said, okay. I saw really sorry. I thought, oh, I'm back in the game now. Hopefully this is good news. Saw the message. And honestly, boys, I'll be real with you. I started crying in the Royal Mail toilets, just my head in my hands, just thinking, like, how am I going to make this jump? How am I going to do this? And that's when I thought, right, I don't care what it looks like. I'm going to start a podcast. I bought 2 mics. I had an idea for one guest who was a friend of mine called Aaron Bowen. He's now signed with Eddie Hearn for Matchroom Boxing. So he's got an incredible story as well. But back then he was just going through the British ranks, trying to get his name just through Team GB and stuff. And that was the only idea I had at the time. Just had one guest in mind. And then I started it and the ball starts to roll. You understand things. You learn a lot of stuff. And as I go back to it, I had a week's work experience at TalkSport. And in between that, I landed a job at Manchester Evening News, writing articles and stuff like that. Really enjoyed it. It was my first gig in the industry. That was just applying for stuff. LinkedIn, perfect place. As you boys know, that's how you reach out to me. It's just so good to network with people, put it out. And it's good because people know you're only going to speak about stuff professionally. I think it's a very brave person to slide into someone's DMs on LinkedIn. That's a bit, so stick to Instagram for that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think, that's obviously my first break in the industry. I was writing articles, loved it, but I just realized, I wanted something a bit more hands-on. Then I had a week's work experience at TalkSport. Thankfully, I impressed kind of thing. I had a day or two in each department, whether it was audio production, social media. And then, yeah, this is linking back to your question a little while ago about what was the most standout moment. This one is right up there. So I had on the Friday, my last day of work experience was working on the breakfast show. So I was in, they said, right, we'll get your car to pick you up because it's really early from wherever you're staying. We'll bring you in. It was Mercedes. I thought, wow, I'm like a millionaire right now. They've sent a Mercedes to take me 5 minutes down the road. And had my day. I thought, right, that's it. Great. Got my picture in the famous dugout, all of that stuff. Excuse me. And I thought, that's it. That day was a Friday. And in the Friday afternoon, I went to Wireless Festival with my friends. And I was watching, I think it was Gunnar, an American artist. I'm a big fan of his. I was watching Gunnar and an email comes up on my phone from Daisy, who's now my manager at TalkSport, saying, hi, I know we didn't get a chance to meet because I was off this week, but you've really impressed. Do you fancy coming in on Monday again to see if we can offer you some work? And that moment where I'm just on my phone, looking up at Gunnar, looking at my phone, I just didn't know what to do. And, since then, as the old saying goes, the rest is history. So, look, I think the big advice I'd give, not just to you boys, but anyone listening to this who's ambitious to have goals that a lot of people would go, are you being serious, mate? Like, come on, try and think of something realistic. Is you've got to believe. And I know it sounds really cliche, and I don't want to go to Jake Humphreys with his podcast and really go inspirational vibes and all of that stuff, but it is so true. You first and foremost, you've got to believe that what you bring to the table, people will like to consume. People will want to hear that or see you in front of a camera. So work hard. And as you've alluded to there, it's a big jump, but ultimately it's contacts. LinkedIn's a perfect place. I spoke to Dharmesh Sefer when I did a podcast, the guy off Sky Sports. He does a lot of the transfer stuff. And he said the biggest advice I can give you, which obviously I'll pass on to you boys, is contacts. Every time you do a podcast, every time you go to even a football game or anything like that, try and get a number off someone. Build that contact book up because you just never know where it could sort of lead to. So, yeah, I think it is a very difficult industry, but for me, there's more than enough room at the top. You look at how many people now are making a name for themselves. All you've got to do is buy one of these bad boys, get a camera, and you're in the industry. Like that's it. You're in. So it's a difficult journey to navigate through, and I'll leave it on this one: patience. I'm delusional enough to think that I can replace Simon Jordan if ever he takes a day off, when realistically I can't, can I? So you've just got to be patient, let things unfold in the way that they should do, and just never lose sight of the goal that you want to achieve, So yeah, be patient, but never stop believing, boys.
I mean, that sounds pretty. I think that rounds off pretty brilliantly. I can't lie.
It does. You've answered the final question without being asked it. So thank you very much.
That's all good. No, but yeah, I just want to say before we do wrap up, thank you for obviously inviting me onto your podcast. I think, as I said, the fact that you're reaching out to people, the fact that you've already got massive names on, like, I'm firmly at the bottom of the list, but that's okay. You've got to start somewhere. But, some of the individuals, Adam Summerton, he was on commentary for the Man United game tonight, so that just shows, just keep believing, reaching out to people, don't stop, and you never know where this could get you. So yeah, great to see people really trying. And if I could give back to people who were in a similar position to me, then I'll always do it. So massive thank you to you boys, and the best of luck in your journey in this industry.
Thank you very much. We genuinely, that's really nice, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. So again, well, from us, Anil, thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. You've gained some very valuable advice and some really interesting stories from your side, which has been brilliant. If it all fails, I know who to blame now.
There you go. See, there you go. You can always leave with something, can't you? What's that meme?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm leaving it with something. So there you go. You've left with that, haven't you? So yeah. Hopefully not. Hopefully it leads you to being the face of this industry, both of you. But yeah, if it doesn't go too well, then fine. I'll take the blame.
Annoyingly, the bit of advice you've given us that's really sticking in my mind is slide into people's DMs on Instagram, not LinkedIn, and that is.
Yeah, rule 1: don't use LinkedIn to drop a bit of riz, boys. Come on, don't do it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And Sam, thank you very much for joining us once again. And yeah, thank you.